My name is Maya Brown. I was around 17 years old when the accident happened. I was with my two sisters and a male friend who was driving a Maserati. I happened to sit on the passenger's seat that night, while my sisters were in the back seat. We were driving back from a nightclub. It was around 2 in the morning. Another car was speeding, and that shocked my friend. So he swerved the car. The car lost control and finally hit a big tree. When the car made a sudden stop, smoke was coming from the front of the car. I saw the guy next to me was unconscious. I tried calling my sister's name. Even though I thought that I was screaming, after a few seconds I realized there was no sound coming out from my mouth. I tried to look back and think. I had to get us home before our parents found out. After a while, I heard both of my sisters mumbling. I thought, I really have to move quickly before the car blows up. With the strength I had left, I forced open the door and tried to move the seat forward and pull my sisters out one by one. When we were all out, a few cars pulled over to help. One person gave up her taxi so we could get to the hospital as quickly as possible. I realized that only one of my sisters was in the cab with me, while my youngest sister was still at the accident site. I was told by Pam, the sister with me, that she would make it to the hospital by another taxi. Our taxi driver took us to the hospital. I kept talking to Pam and saying that we've got to go home, and we've got to get Phoebe, my other sister, and just go home. I didn't realize that there was a big hole on my right eyebrow. The moment we arrived, the nurses were rushing us to the emergency room. I couldn't understand why they were so rushed. I didn't feel any pain, and I assumed that Pam was okay, just with some bruises, until a nurse asked me what was my name. I remember that I wasn't able to say my name, but I kept asking for Pam, and I had the urge to be with her. She was in the other room. I wasn't allowed to be with her. As the nurse kept asking me repeatedly for my name, I remember asking her to get my boyfriend. Again, when she asked me for his name and his number, I knew and remembered his name, but I couldn't say his name and his phone number. I was wondering what was wrong with me. The next thing I heard was one of the male nurses telling me to get on the wheelchair. I said no to him, not until I see Pam. He took me to see my sister, and I remember grabbing her hand and begged her to tell everybody, and we're fine, and we need to go home. Pam said to me that we can't since there's a hole on my forehead. That was the moment that I suddenly felt really tired and cold. I heard the nurses talking to each other, and they said that they really have to rush me in because I was losing blood. I couldn't understand at all, because I didn't feel that there was anything wrong with me. Anyway, after seeing Pam, I felt slightly relieved. The nurse pulled me on my wheelchair, and we entered the theater room. They helped to move me to the bed, and I could feel the bed was cold. I felt even colder and started shivering. I remember the nurse asked if I was cold, and I nodded my head. Then a doctor came in and he talked to me and asked a few questions which I don't recall. Finally, the doctor told me to count from 1 to 10, so I did. I knew I was falling asleep. My head was spinning and my eyes were getting heavier and heavier, but I told myself that I should stay awake no matter what, to witness what the doctor was going to do to my face. I stopped counting at 3. That was the moment when I felt gradually that everything seemed so light. I was thinking that it was so weird that I was able to feel my toes. I thought I had to make sure that the doctor knew what he was doing, because I didn't want to feel any needles that he may use or any pain he may cause. I pulled my head up a little and saw my toes. I thought it was weird that the doctors and nurses weren't stopping me from moving. Suddenly I was floating. I remember feeling a sensation that was incredibly light, as if I had no weight whatsoever, as if there was a gust of wind that carried me and I was flying slowly. I sat on one of the cupboards inside the theater room. I remember thinking, this must be death. How come it is totally different than what most people have talked about? I saw my own body. The doctor and nurses were busy doing everything they were doing. I turned my head to my left side, and there was a wall. But I knew something was coming. The next thing I knew, there was a star that came down through the ceiling and stopped just next to my left leg. As if I didn't have any control of my body, I floated up to sit on that star. I was facing my body, the bed, and the people around my body. I saw my sister was in the other room. Doctors were helping her broken arm. I thought, this is it. It is my time. I couldn't feel any sadness, worry, or fear. I thought of my mom, dad, siblings, friends, and thought, they'll be fine without me. The feeling of joy was beyond the word itself. It was overwhelming. The feeling was love, totally unconditional love that I've never felt before. The total feeling of acceptance, and I merged into that vortex of love. It felt like I was coming home. I was relieved. There was no burden. I was safe. I was at ease. Everything was so perfect in that realm. I remember thinking, this is so much better than living as a person on Earth. I wouldn't want to go back there. This is where I belong, and I love this feeling. I promised myself that I wouldn't want to come back. The star slowly moved up, and I saw the whole hospital in a second. I was looking down to see the whole of Singapore, full of lights in the dark of the universe. I was being driven by this star and moving above and further. I was the whole entire planet, and the sun, and the moon. Next, I saw the entire galaxy. I was still feeling so calm, relieved, relaxed, and joyful during this ride. Also, I remember thinking this was so much better than a roller coaster ride. I used to feel afraid of heights, but I didn't feel that anymore. After a while, I was mesmerized with the beauty of our galaxy. It was so colorful and bright. I looked around me. I didn't see anybody at all, but I heard a voice. The voice was a soft, soothing voice that said that it is not my time to come home yet. I argued with that voice, saying that there's no way anybody could bring me back to the planet Earth. I wanted to stay, but that soothing voice kept saying, "It is not your time. Go and have fun. Go and have fun. Go and have fun." I wasn't sure if it was a male or female voice at that point. I grabbed the star to make sure that no one could move me. As soon as I grabbed it, I felt like I was being sucked down. I saw the galaxy, the stars, and lights in a fast-moving speed as the Earth was getting closer. I saw the island of Singapore and the roof of the hospital and went through the ceilings. I was being sucked into my body again. I felt the jolt as I entered my body. The next thing I heard was the nurse trying to wake me up, shaking my body and squeezing both of my big toes. I slowly opened up my eyes. I knew what just happened was not a dream. I have been keeping this story to myself because I don't think people would believe me. I'd never heard of a near-death experience until Anita Morjani's story. What she described in the book was real. I was there to witness what people called the unconditional love. Watch this near-death experience next about a woman who has been declined to get into heaven. This was the reason, as God explains to her. I was in too much pain to sleep, and stayed awake to the point of exhaustion, and drifted off. I thought I was having a dream. I was in a blue kind of darkness, and a young man materialized, seeming to float above me. He wore a white shift of some sort, but it was like I could see through him at the same time. He beckoned me to come with him, and that he wouldn't hurt me. I took his hand and felt myself rise from my bed towards the ceiling. I looked down and saw my curled-up figure at the foot of the bed. The man said that we didn't have much time left. I told him I wanted to say goodbye to my family. It was as if he allowed me to float over my sister's bed, where I sent my love. I then floated through the